Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my hobby channel. In this video I will be looking at cannons and mortars and the Hellblaster volley gun and rocket battery. And I'll also be taking a look at some of the historical miniatures, ex-Citadel and non-GW options that are out there. I'll start with a quick unboxing of the cannons and mortars, and I'll look at the options that you get and the spare parts that you're left with, and how you might be able to squeeze a few extra pieces of artillery out of a box by using wheels from other manufacturers. And these are some wheels that I got Dave from Museum Miniatures to create for me when I was running the Battleforge miniatures. So we've got some different types of spoked wheels, and then I went on to sculpt some solid wheels which I was thinking of using for siege towers, Orc and Goblin war machinery, anything like that. And finally, I've got some bits and pieces left over from my days of running the Battleforge when I was looking at how I could best demonstrate and market the wheels that the Battleforge was selling. And I haven't dismantled these because I'm thinking of creating some war wagons for my Old World Empire army, and possibly even an articulated steam tank out of those two bits there. On this side of the table I've got an old metal cannon here, which I think is a foundry cannon, although it may originally have been an Empire cannon from Citadel miniatures. As I've said before, a lot of ex-Citadel miniatures are still available from foundry, and I've got some perfect examples here. Both of these small cannon are available from foundry miniatures, and I think both of them were ex-Citadel. I certainly bought this lot here from Games Workshop Citadel miniatures when I was a teenager. As you can see, these guys have still got the tabs on them, which is typical of Citadel and Games Workshop. So we've got Godfrey, Otto, Wart, and Hugh. These guys here are still available as feudal artillery crew. The price may have changed because I've had this a while, but there they are. And as you can see, when they were transferred to foundry, the tabs were removed and they were put on these standard sort of puddle bases, or pudding bases as some people call them. In addition, there's a couple of bombards there which were sculpted by Dave from Museum Miniatures, and I've acquired a handful of those to use both in Warhammer the Old World and my historical miniature agnostic armies. And then here we've got a naval gun, one that I painted up because it belongs on a ship, and one that is unpainted, and these are from Ainsty Castings. And just a final point before I crack open the plastic boxes, on this one here you can see how I've tapered the wheels. And I think on a lot of plastics, I don't know if we can see from the box art there, the cannon wheels seem to be straight. I want to say perpendicular to the ground. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but that's not very realistic. And restoring this, you can see that I've actually tried to achieve that with the galloper gun there. Just kind of making sure that the wheels are at a slight angle, so that the movement of this cannon would force that wheel up the axle in that direction, so that if anything did break, the wheel wouldn't just drop off straight away. Destructions. Bases for the cannon crew. 2 50 by 75 bases for the cannon. 2 of these sprues with the wheels and the axles on. And then 2 sprues with arms, cannons, and the gun trails. 2 different sizes, one for the cannon, one for the mortar. So if we just take a close-up view of the first sprue, these are the plastic wheels which anyone who plays Empire will be very familiar with now. And then we've got the part of the gun carriage here, which holds either the cannon or the mortar, and depending on which you choose, there are two different grooves there to take the cannon or mortar supports, and there are the brackets that overlay that, and the orientation of those would depend which cannon you put in. But as I said, I'll show that when I actually build it. And then here we've got some weapon arms, 3 different legs, 3 different torsos, and then a little bit of Ordinance furniture, handles, hooks and things to stick on the cannon. And there's an ammo box there. So we've got 2 of these sprues to give us 2 sets of crew and front half of 2 limbers with the axle. And then we've got 2 of these, and here you can see the trails as I mentioned. So the cannon has the longer trail. That's the cannon, which is very similar in design to this old school metal one that I've got. And there's the mortar, and I do think I've actually got a metal one of these somewhere. I'll have to dig out at some point. And then you've got the various ramrods, sponges, etc. As I said, there are 2 of these as well. So let's get building. Right, so I'll start by snipping off the bits that I need to make the cannon. Wheels, brackets, axle. Now this thing here, I've had a look at the instructions, that's if you choose the mortar, that's a rest to keep the mortar pointing skyward. I'll snip off some of these details a bit later. I'm just checking for detachment scars, anything that will look ugly when it's painted or get in the way of the assembly. End of the axles, it might stop the wheels sliding on neatly. There's that one there that you probably won't see, but I tend to use a blunt scalpel for this, not a really sharp one, because you're just scratching off excess bits of plastic, and you don't actually want to be carving great chunks out of the model. But it also means you can run up against your thumb and you're not going to cut yourself because the blade isn't that sharp. There we are. Not too much. There we are. Interestingly, 2 different designs there. I'd forgotten about this. So you can stick handles there and have the kind of skull and laurel design, or shield, crown and laurel design if you flip it over, and again stick the handles there. When this is dry, you can always run a needle file in there just to tidy up the join. Right, so here we've got the limber or the gun carriage. So I'm going to glue that onto there. According to the instructions, the cannon goes in the forward of the 2 divots, and the mortar will sit in the rear of the 2 divots there. So that's going to go in there for this one, and then that will glue on there. I'm not putting any glue in the forward one, and I'll go for probably that design on this cannon. Drop that one in there. Then you would glue the wheels on, but at the moment I'm not going to. I may actually paint the limber and the cannon without the wheels in place. If you've glued it together and you're trying to get a paintbrush in to paint metal straps or tyres around the wheel. So I'll choose some handles now. So it looks like the choice is dolphins or dragons. So I'll do one of each because I've got 2 boxes of these. I'm just going to very gently try and put the smallest dab of glue on there. Try, even though I have real difficulty holding things at the moment. There, that looks pretty cool. Just check those are symmetrical enough. There we go, I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave that to dry now. So here we are with the other sprue that I haven't cut the cannon from. And I'll go with the short, I don't know what you call these, trail, stock, I don't know. But the short trail for the gun carriage, the stubby mortar barrel. So that leaves a second cannon barrel and those that I haven't used. And then we want this little thing here, which helps support the mortar, and then I'll come back for anything else that I need. Okay, so I've cleaned up the detachment scars on all of these. Next, I'm gluing the shorter trail to the part of the gun carriage with the axle. Bring them together. Now the mortar sits in the back one, but you can see there why they've included this little bit here to just go in there, keep that upright. Around there quickly. Hands are really shaking today. So there's that. And I'll drop that in there, but not actually glue it. Instead, I'm just going to drop some glue on the gun carriage. There we go. A join showing there, which you can always fill in with either liquid green stuff, proper green stuff, or a plastic putty. I tend to use a plastic putty or a tiny bit of milliput for something like that. But again, I'm just pushing those on rather than gluing them. And I'll deal with those later, but I'll probably paint this with the wheels off before I put them on. But you can see what I was saying earlier in the video on this, that these wheels are vertical. As I said, I want to say perpendicular to the ground, but I don't know if that's right. And in real life, they would have been like that, most likely, because that would help keep the wheels on the axle. But that's it's a rivet counter thing rather than a necessity. But I just do enjoy adding an extra bit of realism. So I've done one mortar and one cannon from one box. Now I want to take a look at the leftover pieces. Okay, so I've built the spare bits that were left over. So we've got the trail for the cannon gun carriage, the long trail there with the cannon barrel, and I've glued the dolphins on this one. I could have glued another set of dragon handles, but went for dolphins. the mortar I've put together, and then we've got the short trail that was left over, spare, and this little support. So basically, because I chose to build one of each out of a box of 2 cannon or mortar, I've got one of each left. But I could have built 2 of these and had 2 cannons left over, or I could have built 2 of these and had 2 mortars left over. But what I'm going to try and do is scratch build the little platform there and the supports that run down the side of the cannon or the mortar barrel. I've already got that piece, and I'm going to try and squeeze an extra 2 guns out of this box. And if we look again at some of the wheels that I had made for the Battle Forge when I set up that company and ran it for a while, you'll see I've got 3 different sizes, and as I said, these were engineered. Sculpted seems to be a weird word to use, because they were turned on the lathe and engineered by Dave from Museum Miniatures, who did an excellent job on these. And if we look at the plastic cannon, you can very quickly see that large wheels are too big, better suited for wagons. Medium wheels are a little on the large side, but the small wheels I had done are pretty close. So if I'm looking to scratch build that cannon chassis, then, or gun carriage I should say, then I've got some wheels there. Okay, these are painted, but they're cast in metal. I've got some metal wheels there that I can use to complete that kit bash or that scratch build. So I will be able to use a bit of plastic card and green stuff to build the axle frame, and then I can just attach the trail and these wheels to it. And you can pick up wheels anywhere off the internet these days. Lots of people are 3D printing them. But as I said, I had these done and I've got these left over, so I will be building extra cannon using these. Right, it was the 1st of February when I shot an unboxing sequence for the Hellblaster Volley gun and Hellstorm rocket that I've got here, and I've done nothing with it since. So that was more or less exactly 3 months ago. Okay, so we have a destruction leaflet. I shall enjoy building those. 2 bases, 2 identical artillery crew, and some bases for the crew. Right, so if we just take a really quick look at this sprue here, you can see we've got 3 different bodies, classic Empire pleats and frills and things. I haven't looked at the instructions yet, but it seems that there's enough to make some rocket crew with ammunition and sponges and things to clean out the barrels. There's this chap here covering his ears and shouting, and then I'm guessing this is some kind of commander or engineer. Right, and this sprue here is the gun carriage and the different ordnance. So we've got a pair of wheels and we've got 2 parts to the chassis. And then we've got the sections that make up the Hellfire Volley gun. And then we've got some sections there that make up a rocket launcher. And then there's some other nice little touches. There's a spade there. And then there's this presentation case for what looks like a long rifle and a brace of pistols. Okay, and the reason why I wanted to refer to the instructions on this was because there's this stage here right at the beginning where you're basically building the gun carriage or the chassis, whatever you want to call it. That's a fairly simple build, and it would appear that that's the kind of jump off point before you then choose between a rocket battery or a volley gun. It sits on that chassis somehow. Haven't worked out how yet, but it sits on that chassis. And then if we skip to the end of the instructions, you've got the same chassis with the rocket battery assembly sitting on there. But my thoughts are to magnetize these and the gun carriage. But until I've built these, I won't know where I can fit magnets and whether that would work. And if it won't work, then I need to be looking at scratch building an alternative to this to get use of the extra bits of ordnance that they give you, because you can either build one of each, a volley gun and a rocket battery, or you can build two of each, 2 volley guns or 2 rocket batteries. So if you choose one of each, you've got one of each left over. And I hate to see plastic go to waste. Okay, so from this sprue, I need the wheels, the first part of the gun carriage or limber or whatever you want to call it, with the axle on, the second elevated part, and then the bit that joins them together is the cog. And then very carefully going to get in and snip off these windy handles, one for each side. And then there's this, which I suspect is the lifty up and down lever. So once again, I'm using a blunt scalpel blade that is a couple of years old, just to scrape off the little detachment scars and clean them up, make sure I've got smooth surfaces for painting and also for gluing parts together. Get some glue in there. Rear cog, smallest and highest up. So that's that. Right, so this bit that sticks down there sits in there. Dab of glue on the little lip either side of those cogs, and some glue in the hinge there. Right, so now we just get the handles on. I'm going to do them vaguely with the skull in the right orientation on that side, and that one's blank. That would then, obviously you'd glue the wheels on, but I said I might leave those off just to make painting easier a bit later. They slip on and off quite nicely. If you are kit bashing and you've got spare bits, or you're missing wheels, or you want to use the wheels for something else, then as I said, I have in the past made some wheels for the Battle Forge. Now that's a little bit of a tight fit, so it'd have to be drilled out, but I just wanted to show you that the size and the design is okay. So if I'm kit bashing anything to go with these, I might use those wheels. Okay, and there, by the magic of YouTube video editing, are 2 finished gun carriages. As I said, the wheels have just been dry fitted, no glue on those yet. So now I've made those, I'm going to build a volley gun and a rocket battery, and then we'll explore how they fit onto these carriages. Okay, so now I'm going to cut out everything I need for the volley gun.
Start with the obvious. Right, okay, so these little notches there, take those, glue in like that. Not always clear on the instructions, put a little on the inside there as well. A little bit of glue on those connectors. Bit of glue on the inside there, on the connector there, and on the piece that I'll be slotting in. Pop that in there like so. Pins.
It then glues in there.
And I will commit to gluing that in. I won't put these on just yet. First thing I want to do is just see how that sits. Take that wheel out.
I'll use the one with the skull because I do not like the Sigma comet or meteor emblem. Never have liked it, and I've always cleaned it off anything Empire that I've built, so.
Glue that badge on the front there. Oh, actually they do just rest on the top of that shield. Still toying with the idea of magnetising these. May not even need to. If it's a good enough fit. I mean, these aren't models that will get moved around as much as a unit of infantry might, so I might be okay just doing that and not need to magnetise them. Right. Sorry, it's a little confusing, but they actually, on the instructions, they line up with these ridges or tongues of metal there, so they fit in there like that. Should have done the middle one first, really. So that's it. So that's one volley gun, barrel and gun carriage, built separately and not glued together.
So I'll be building the other one of these, but the next thing is the rocket battery. Right, and here's the sprue, and according to the instructions I just need these 3 big bits here and that. And I've just noticed whilst I've been cutting that off that this is actually the rear piece for the volley gun, and that should glue into there, so I'll do that now before I forget. Just drop that in there quickly. So that is the volley gun barrel complete with that final bit in the back. Right, so I think they're cleaned up well enough. I'll just tidy that a bit better, that one, because of course any bits that stick out stop it going together properly. So that's the middle one. Okay, and let's have a look at how this sits on there. Same thing at the back, and I guess it might be top heavy, this though. No, that's good. So that just sits on there. A magnet might just help keep it in place, but as it's artillery, and it probably won't be moved too much, and if it is moved, it can be moved by the base. I don't think I'll magnetise them. I think I will just have them slot into place. Although that is, yeah, he says.
And just before I finish up this build, this was the other thing I was worrying about, which looked like it was actually glued onto that part there for the rocket battery. But I do think that would look nice, perhaps on a base next to, because I don't even think that matters, to be honest, if that's separate somewhere on a base. And you've got the Hellblaster volley gun on there, I don't think it matters. I don't really want to put that on there. I'd rather have it glued to a base or on a 25mm base as a substitute crew member. Okay, so in building the second piece of ordnance for the volley gun, I've come to the conclusion or the realization that these are actually firing pins, and I'm presuming they should strike that little spot there. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but if I just cut where the light is catching the top of that ring, and I think I will keep as much on the hammer as possible, because I can always smooth off, add a bit of green stuff to the rim there. So what I'm going to do now is stick that in there, and I'll put the broken bit towards the back, so that when I do come to repair it, it's not obscured by the hammer, which I am now going to try and glue as though it's dropped onto that firing pin. Tiny spot of glue on the firing pin so that the hammer connects with that, and then I'm putting some glue on the half an O-ring that I've just popped in there. Okay, a little bit tricky, feels a bit delicate at the moment. Compare it to the other one, I don't know. I think that looks quite cool. A reasonable amount of glue on there and a little bit on the firing pin, and then try and lower that griffin in place. I'm going to try it. Not working. Gently. Might need a bit more glue, especially on the firing pin. It's just kind of lost its sticky already. Okay, so I think that's a bit fun. So we'll have a proper look at that with its companion at the end of the video, but I'm going to let that dry now. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see this, but I've started to assemble the second rocket battery, and I've decided to actually go ahead and do this in this video, to cut out some fired rockets. So I haven't bothered drilling out the hole in this one because it's right between the griffin's wings, and I can just paint that to look dark, as though there's an empty hole there. But I have drilled out slightly off center, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over that. I've drilled out the hole on that one, and then what I decided to do with this side here is just take the middle one out and then drill through. And I'm coming in here, don't know how well you can see, but I'm just going straight down there to cut that out, and then on same again on the other side, making sure I don't apply too much pressure and accidentally cut through the one above. So I'm going to keep turning it and just working through gently, coming on the other side, and there we go, it's just given. Just clean that off there. Now you could just paint a black dot here if you didn't fancy drilling, and just delicately take the fuse out of that cup, that little whatever it is, charge holder or rest or clamp or whatever, and trim it off there. I decided I was going to drill, so I did take a little twist drill. This one here. Squeeze the plastic tightly so it doesn't move or flex, and then just use some gentle pressure, lots of patience, and just twist slowly. It's not a race. Right, now that's gone through, and I don't know if you can see, I'm allowing it to continue so that it reaches the next one. Now, the issue here is I've chosen to drill out the one in the middle, and it's bending the rockets either side, so I might just settle for a depression in that one rather than going all the way through. Clean it up off camera, but basically you can see I've gone through the first one and just left a depression in the second one, because really it doesn't matter too much about the back of that one. Get that in there. So I've glued that in there. Hands drifted off camera, but there you can see there are a few rockets missing. So fully loaded, partially fired, and it's just a bit fun. That's the kind of thing I like, because of course what I can do now is I can do a loader with a rocket, you know, coming around the front or whatever. It's just a scope for a bit more fun, and it should make more sense once it's painted. There we go, just very quickly. That's the final assembly of the two rocket launchers, the rocket batteries, I should say, and I've got some spare rockets there that I can kit bash with as well. Okay, so as I come towards the end of this particular video, I just wanted to take a quick look at the cannon and mortars so far. As I said, I haven't glued the wheels on, and I've also attached some small accessories. There's the metal rings there that go on the front to help pull and maneuver the cannon, and then you also get these kind of hooks or cradles, which are just big enough to take one plastic artillery tool, whether that's a sponge or a ramrod or whatever. On a lot of the box art and in some of the earlier codexes, you'd often see them in a barrel there, which I've glued together, and I've also snipped off some of the other pieces. I think this might have been a rest to put stuff in. I've seen it used like that, but I also think it's probably something that you can use with the pieces to make an engineer, and you can have the long rifle or sniper rifle resting in that. So I'll be doing all the accessories and the terrain and everything later, because I've also got loads of these Renedra gabions with which I want to make artillery or gun emplacements. I've also got this metal cannon, which I think is a foundry model and possibly an ex-citadel from the earlier days of Empire, when most of it was metal. You can see there, that's a comparable size. So I may or may not want to paint that up so I can use that in historical games as well. And finally, I just wanted to look at these again. You can see here the rocket battery that I've done here. This one is fully loaded. My hobby desk is slightly sloped, so if I twist it around, it'll topple forward. But once the gun carriage is glued onto a base, that won't be a problem. That will be anchored securely. And I probably won't bother with magnets, because these just rest quite nicely in the slots. So what I might do is either leave them loose and free so I can swap between rocket batteries and volley guns. As you saw earlier in this video, I snipped off some of the griffins and had them and glued them on again, leaning forward as though it has fired.
So I can use this either as a battery of 2 volley guns, or I can swap the different tops over between the 1 gun carriage to show a volley gun that's primed and ready to fire, and a volley gun that's unable to fire in one particular turn. The other thing that I've started to do is just to collect all the little accessories that you get. I've got these hot coals and a spade, buckets and barrels and various other bits and pieces. I've just left a little bit of sprue on that one so it doesn't roll away. One of the things that I'm not particularly keen on is removing artillery crew members when your artillery piece takes a hit. Basically the crew are just wound markers, and you start to take them off, you eventually end up with a cannon or a trebuchet that's manned by 1 person, and it just doesn't look realistic. And I don't like my wargaming table to be littered with counters or tokens either. That's just a matter of personal taste. I think it spoils the nice look of a fully painted army when you've got all these extra bits and pieces of sort of plastic and stuff lying around. So one thing that I'll be looking at in a future video is using extra bits and pieces, barrels, crates, whatever, as the wound markers instead. So you can have your cannon with your crew and then 3 or 4 bases behind, and every time the cannon takes a hit, you just move some of these accessories away. So visually it looks like the ammunition is running out. But of course, in gameplay terms, it means that you're running out of wounds on your war machines. And just to finish off with as well, as I said earlier in this video, I want to take a look at scratch building and kit bashing some limbers. So there's a lot to do, too much for one video and too much for me to deal with in one go. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. Please like and subscribe if you have. And don't forget to check out my other videos for more hints and tips on building, kit bashing and converting models. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.